It was a cold Thursday morning. At least I assume it was. Early that morning, before the sun had risen, my home was filled with strangers, family, and police. My wife was in the front yard talking to a man I had never seen before, while another well-dressed man was in my room speaking to the police and getting papers signed. It never even occurred to me at the time to wonder why none of them were speaking to me. Before I knew it, my wife and family had left and gone with her sister. The men had all stayed behind. I wondered why these men were all in my home, but for some unknown reason a strange, inexplicable sense of calm had washed over me. The strange men began to move my body. I was always a large man, and they were struggling. I never understood why this didn't bother me. It even crossed my mind later that I should have helped them move me. After they struggled for what seemed an eternity, they placed me in some sort of bag and covered my face. The amount of pain I felt as they dragged me through my home struck me as odd, not because of the pain itself, or even the way I was being treated, but primarily because the pain seemed relaxing in some odd way. Once we had finally left the house, I was put onto a rolling cot. I and the cot were then loaded into the back of a white van. The first man who had been speaking to my wife was rather old, shorter in stature and bald. The second was a young man, slightly taller than average, with a short beard and in good physical shape. At first, I thought I was going to be going with the police, but these two men were the ones who took me in the van. The trip wasn't too long, anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. When the van had finally stopped, the second, younger man had pulled the cot with me on it from the van, while the older man went inside with a clipboard and some paperwork. The younger man took the cot and myself into another room next to the first where the van was and pulled a larger metal rolling table next to me. The two of them then talked for a moment. They didn't seem to get along very well, and then pulled me onto the new table. The younger man then pushed the table into some kind of standing enclosed space and closed the door behind me. They left soon after that, and for some time that was the last I had heard from anyone. Time passed slowly, and what I had learned was called a cooler. Sometimes I would hear voices, usually that same old man complaining about people and fumbling around with the spaces near me. Every now and then I would hear the younger man's voice. He was kind to me and the others. He always called us by our names and asked how we were doing. It was from him that I learned the names of my neighbors. Every so often I heard the voice of a young woman as well. She sounded kind, though she wouldn't speak to us like the young man. The two of them would sometimes come around together. I could tell they were in love with each other. I was happy that the kind young man had a woman to spend his days with when things got difficult, as they so often seemed to for him. I have no way of knowing how long I was in the cooler. I do know, however, that it was a long while. There came a point where I was taken out and put back into the same van. For a moment I was excited. I thought I was being brought back home, to someday forget about this strange chapter of my life. I was wrong, however. I was quickly brought into another room where there were 2 or 3 tables with other people on them. In this room was some sort of equipment hanging from the ceiling above a large medical-looking table that was leaning downwards on one end close to a sink. On the sink countertop there were all kinds of cleaning bottles, sprays, and tubes. When they put me in the room, I was not put on this larger table, but a smaller folding table pulled from the corner. While on this table I was cold, I could feel my skin sticking to the table. But worst of all, I was nude. I didn't know why I was. However, when that young woman came into the room, I felt the first real feeling since all of this strangeness began: shame. This young woman was different than the other. She was colder, almost clinical in the way she moved and seemed to barely notice us, even while she looked directly at us.